What's up, guys? It's your man, Donovan Sharp, and welcome to this edition of Sharp Shorts. Let's get right to it. So, the Karmelo Anthony murder trial started yesterday, and that, of course, means jury selection. So, over the next couple of days or so, they're going to whittle 600 potential jurors down to just 12, and I think maybe a few alternates. I think it's like 4 or 6. Don't quote me on that. And as of right now, opening statements are tentatively scheduled to start on June the 4th, which I believe is this coming Thursday. Now, as expected, there are protests outside of the courthouse, which is no surprise, because according to Sarah Fields on Twitter, 95% of people protesting appear to be Karmelo Anthony supporters. Like I said on yesterday's live, there are strict security and media bans due to the heavy public scrutiny, death threats, potential jury tampering, and all kinds of other crazy shenanigans. Now, Karmelo Anthony has pleaded not guilty, with his defense relying heavily on a self-defense argument. And because of this, the prosecution carries the burden of having to prove beyond all reasonable doubt that Anthony was not acting in self-defense when he stabbed Austin Metcalf on that fateful day in Frisco, Texas, last April 2nd. However, if the prosecution focuses on one singular point, it should actually be quite easy to meet this burden if the jury is impartial and uses rationale and common sense. And what is that singular point, you ask? Well, that singular point is a statement that came directly out of the mouth of Karmelo Anthony himself before he plunged that kitchen knife into the chest of Austin Metcalf. And that statement is, of course, touch me and see what happens. Now, anyone who has followed this story is well aware of what's been reported in terms of the series of events that led to the stabbing. But in case you've been living under a rock and you have no idea, here's the TLDR version. During a track meet at Frisco ISD in Texas back on April 2nd, 2025, Karmelo Anthony, a 17-year-old student at Centennial High School, sat under the Memorial High School tent. Well, Austin Metcalf, who is a student at Memorial High School, who was also 17 years old, he took exception. He confronted Karmelo Anthony and told him to leave. Anthony then reaches into his backpack and says to Metcalf, "Touch me and see what happens." Metcalf then allegedly pushed him, shoved him, grabbed him, or made some sort of physical contact with Karmelo Anthony, at which point Anthony pulled out the knife and stabbed Austin Metcalf in the chest, causing him to bleed out and die in the arms of his twin brother Hunter. Now, why? I'm sure people are asking me, okay, why is this touch me and see what happens statement made by Karmelo Anthony? Why is this so significant? Well, the answer is quite simple. A person who is genuinely in fear for their life most definitely would not threaten or provoke or even dare their assailant to take any action. And the reason why they wouldn't is because in their minds, if the assailant does take action, that person knows that they could either lose their life or suffer serious bodily injury. In Texas, in the state of Texas, deadly force is justified if you reasonably believe that it is immediately necessary to protect yourself against another's use or attempted use of unlawful deadly force, or to prevent the imminent commission of severe violent crimes like murder, aggravated kidnapping, assault, or robbery. So let me give you a couple of examples to illustrate why this invalidates Karmelo Anthony's self-defense claim. Let's just say someone disables my home security, breaks into my house, somehow manages to not wake up my ferocious attack dog, Fernando, wakes me up, and then points a weapon in my face. At that very moment, I will definitely be in fear for my life because there is a burglar in my house with a weapon pointed at me. Now, even if I know I have a weapon under my pillow and am prepared to defend myself, the one thing I am not going to do is threaten the burglar. And the reason why I'm not going to threaten the burglar is because I know that he could end my life right then and there. All he's got to do is squeeze the trigger. And think about it. How stupid would I sound if I said to the burglar, "Squeeze that trigger and see what happens"? That's pretty goddamn stupid, right? I'm in fear for my life. So why on God's green earth would I provoke a guy who has a weapon pointed at me? Well, the answer is that I wouldn't. Let's use an example that's a little more adjacent to the case. Let's say that I'm sitting under a tent, right? Just like Karmelo, and Brock Lesnar and his twin brother Francis Ngannou roll up on me and say, "Yo, you need to leave." If I am genuinely in fear for my life, which for the record, I most certainly would be, I am not going to say to Brock, "Touch me and see what happens." Why? Because in my mind, if he does, I'm going to lose my life or suffer serious bodily harm. Remember, I think this guy can kill me. Actually, I know this guy can kill me. So the fact that Karmelo Anthony threatened Austin Metcalf by saying, touch me and see what happens. That tells us very clearly that he was not, in fact, in fear for his life. And the reason we know this is because when he said, and see what happens, Carmelo knew in his mind that A, he had a weapon and Metcalf did not. And remember, in the police report, he said, he put hands on me, which is plural. You can't put both hands on someone if you have a weapon. And B, Carmelo also knew that whatever Metcalf did to him, he would survive and or not be physically harmed enough not to retaliate. In other words, Carmelo Anthony knew that whatever Austin Metcalf was going to do was not going to end his life or critically injure him. And that is exactly the reason why he quite literally dared Metcalf to make a move. Now, I can hear all the pro blackety blacks talking about, you don't know what was in his head. And you would be right. I don't know what's in his head. Nobody's a mind reader. But Carmelo's actions were the physical manifestation of his thoughts. And the simple truth is that a person who is genuinely in fear for their life wouldn't threaten or provoke the person that they're afraid is going to end their life. Going back to the examples that I used earlier, if someone breaks to my house and puts a weapon in my face, whether or not I have a weapon under my pillow, I'm not going to threaten him and verbally escalate the situation. Me and my wife's lives are on the line. So instead, I would attempt to maybe de escalate the situation and tell him, hey, man, look, just take what you want and leave. Just take what you want and leave. In the other example I used with the tent, whether I had a knife in my backpack or not, I am not going to provoke or dare a person that much larger than myself, whom I believe could end my life or critically injure me, to say, touch me and see what happens. No, I'd have just said, hey, that's cool, man. Hey, look, I'll grab my backpack. I'll leave this tent and sit somewhere else. Those are the actions of someone who is genuinely in fear for their life. The way Carmelo Anthony spoke and acted that day clearly shows that he was not worried, nor was he afraid that he was going to lose his life or suffer some sort of critical injury. Touch me and see what happens are not the words of a person who is afraid of whatever the touch me is. Now, this alone completely invalidates his self-defense claim, but there is one more element that has to be met to successfully prove self-defense that will effectively put the nail in the coffin of his defense, and that, of course, is the element of proportionality. According to Texas Penal Code Section 9.2, specifically the rule of proportionality, your response must be legally proportional to the threat you face. You generally cannot use deadly force against a threat of simple assault or minor physical harm. Doing so will likely invalidate a self-defense claim and lead to severe criminal charges. Let's dig a little deeper and explore the key limitations, specifically reasonableness, regarding deadly force, to really drive this point home. It says if you use deadly force against a threat that only warranted regular physical force, e.g., shooting someone who simply shoved you, or in this case, stabbing someone who simply shoved you, your actions will be deemed disproportionate and you can face criminal charges. In other words, just because someone tells you to leave the tent and grabs or pushes you does not give you the right to respond with deadly force. It is clear that Austin Metcalf did indeed make physical contact with Carmelo Anthony. Whether he pushed him, grabbed him, or shoved him, whatever the case may be, Anthony's response to Metcalf's physical contact, whatever it was not commensurate with said physical contact. Carmelo Anthony stabbing Austin Metcalf in the chest is not a proportional response. And the reason we know this is because Carmelo had positively zero injuries. Look, there was no black eye, no broken bones, no strangle marks, no stab wounds, no blood, no nothing. Whatever Metcalf did to Anthony was neither deadly nor did it critically injure him. Also, let's not forget this. Let's not forget that Carmelo Anthony also told the officer, quote, he put hands on me, as his reason for stabbing Metcalf. According to his own words to the cop, he would not have stabbed Metcalf had Metcalf not put hands on him. And given that there were no reported injuries to Carmelo Anthony following that incident, it is crystal clear that his retaliation was not proportionate to whatever Austin Metcalf did to him. So the bottom line here is that the Collin County District Attorney's Office, they've got Carmelo Anthony dead to rights. According to Texas law, his claim of self-defense is right out the window. He should be found guilty of first-degree murder, but that remains to be seen because there are already rumors of jury tampering, which means Carmelo Anthony supporters know that he is going to be found guilty, and they're actively trying to find a way around it. Stay tuned.